floor is yours.
Thanks. Good morning. I'm Jussi, and I'm the loud and proud CEO of Nitro Games, and great to be here today in Stockholm. Thanks for the sunshine. It was minus 10 degrees and snowing where I left early this morning. Today we talk about games. I'm a gamer. I've been playing games, video games we called them back in the day, for more than 30 years. I think more than 35 years now. I've been making games for more than 20 years and been working in the industry, earning my living by making games for more than 15 years now. But today we talk about Nitro Games. And at Nitro Games, we are a company hailing from Finland, and we are listed here in Stockholm on Nasdaq First North since 2017. And we have one of the most oldest and most experienced teams in Finland. We've been working together for more than 11 years now. We worked on several different platforms in the past and so on and so on. But last couple of years, 5 years to be exact, at the moment, our focus has been on this, so games on a mobile phone. And the reason why this is so important is because our audience is pretty much like me. They are typically male. They come from the so-called Western countries. They typically have slightly better than average income, and they work pretty hard. So they no longer necessarily have the time to sit in front of computers or play with their consoles, but they do have the mobile phone with them at all times. So that's our target group there. And the stuff that we do is basically a portfolio of these games. And what that means is that we build what we call competitive multiplayer games. So our games enable guys like me to play against another human being in real time with my mobile phone, whether the another human being is in Sweden or in Finland or in US or somewhere in Asia and so on. So we build our games for global distribution. We build our games with global appeal. So we design and develop games that appeal both to the European customer, to the customers in the United States, for example, and in Asia. And what we're doing right now is we are focusing more and more into this thing called esports, which is basically playing games for a living. I'm sure you have seen some headlines about esports and competitive gaming, but that's what it essentially is. People becoming professional sports stars by playing video games. And our games support this type of trend, now also coming to mobile gaming. Let's have a look. So this one's called Heroes of Warland, and that's our latest game release. And when we talk about building games that have global appeal, I mentioned that we're making games for our target customer, which is typically your Western male above 30s and so on. However, that's not all. We build our games so that they actually appeal to different cultures, but also to different sexes. We have a lot of female players as well. So therefore, we portray all our characters in a cartoony fashion, because we make basically shooter games, because shooter games from gameplay mechanics point of view are the best working games typically when it comes to multiplayer, because they're so challenging and demanding and you have a learning curve. But you don't want to make it too violent, because you want it to be something that also a younger audience can enjoy, something that's politically correct and so on. So you don't want to be displaying too much blood or make it too realistic looking and so on. Hence the cartoony and colorful style. What you also want to do is to make sure that you build it something that people can relate to. So you don't want to be sexist. Therefore, we have female characters in our game, but we portray them in a strong fashion. We don't portray female characters as sex objects like so many game companies do. So we put everything there equally, and we flirt with different cultures and different colors and different sexes and so on and so on. And this is how we build truly global IP. So that's how our product looks like. And last year, I thought to briefly summarize where we were there, was a very interesting year for us, but it was also a little bit challenging year for us. Because last year, basically, Nitro Games focused in completing development on several different projects in our portfolio. So basically, last year was all about working on multiple different games for us, and towards the end of the year, we were finishing the development, which is basically the building stage of the games, and preparing them for launches. So we had Heroes of Warland there, which you just saw the video from. And then, in addition to Heroes of Warland, we were building the whole network of partnerships and opportunities connected with the game launch so that we can spread it as effectively and as wide as possible. We built a reality show we call Heroes and Superstars together with Gaming Stone Entertainment here in Stockholm. And basically Heroes and Superstars is professional esports players playing our game and making reality TV out of that. And this also translates to the esports phenomenon where these superstars not just play the game on screen in studios, but also on big stage in live tournaments and so on. And this is esports on mobile. It's something that's already now starting to happen on the market, but it's also something that doesn't yet really exist in full. So instead of entering a market that already exists, we're part of creating a new phenomenon into the mobile gaming. And together with Heroes of Warland and Heroes and Superstars, we've been busy making deals with some of the biggest companies in the industry, supporting the launch and supporting our endeavors of spreading the game out there, both end of last year and especially during this year. In addition to Heroes of Warland, in our portfolio there's also other titles. We launched a new version of our game called Medals of War towards the end of last year. We completed a big project with a company called Wargaming. The game was called RuneGate Heroes that we developed with them together for 2 years. And the development concluded with them in the end of last year. And basically that means that especially towards the end of the year, there was tons of things going on in the company and we were wrapping up all these things together. But let's have a little bit closer look at what did that all mean in practice. So with Heroes and Superstars, after the end of last year, the game is now available in the 4 key channels we see here. If you have an Android phone, you probably are going to get the game from Google Play. If you have an iPhone, you go to the App Store and download it from there. Then we also launched it in the Huawei App Gallery and Samsung Galaxy App Stores. These are a little bit smaller storefronts that are exclusive for these hardware manufacturers. And these are tied to some of the deals that we did with the game with some of the biggest companies in the industry. And all of these deals, one way or another, help us do the marketing, spread the word about the game. Because when we look at mobile games, we talk about very data-driven process. So whenever we're building a game like Heroes and Superstars, what we're essentially doing is we're combining creative talent that builds all the characters on screen, makes the gameplay fun, designs the game with very data-driven analytical side. And this data-driven analytical side is because our games are actually free to play. So you can go right now in the Google Play or App Store or any store you want to go and type in Heroes of Warland and be playing in a matter of a couple of minutes without paying anything. You get the full game like that. But there's a small fraction of our audience that actually pays for something. Those we call the paying customers. And those paying customers basically buy digital goods inside our games. It might be a new character. It might be some improvements to the character that makes it run a little bit faster or things like that. But digital goods. And out of all those things combined, we come up with what we call lifetime value. So how much does the average user bring us money? And that's how we make our revenues with these games. But then again, customers don't come for free. We need to pay to get installs. That we do through marketing, which we often call user acquisition. And this is something that we achieved with Heroes of Warland in end of last year during the initial launch. The orange bars over there in this graph, these describe the sort of average cost per install number in this mid-core category. Mid-core means games for gamers, basically. And as we can see from here, for example, that in the United States, on iOS devices, so iPhones and so on, the average is a little bit more than €2 per install. So if I want one user to install my game, I need to pay a little bit more than €2. In our case, we started with just below 1.5 euros, but towards the end of the year, we were already below €1. It's now been split into two different phases during the initial launch. So what this does communicate to us is that we can acquire users to our game cheaper than competition. And that's important because it means that our games has traction. People are willing to download the game, willing to try it out when they see advertisement, and therefore our cost per install figures are smaller. This helps us long term to build scalable business case out of the game, and this helps us long term making the game spread widely. During the first 6 weeks, we achieved 650,000 downloads for the game, which is more than our previous game Medals of War has gotten in its lifetime. So that speaks of the volumes there. However, due to the nature of the free-to-play, just getting the customers in doesn't cut it, because like I explained, we still need to convert them into paying customers. So we need to make sure that we first retain the customers once we get them in and convert them into paying customers. And this is something where we are not yet satisfied with what we achieved with Heroes of Warland. So this is something where there still is work to be done now during the first quarter while we improve the game moving forward. Financials. So historically, this here describes our previous 3 years. We've seen our revenues fluctuate from one quarter to another. This has been quite normal for us. Typically depends on especially some of the biggest projects in the service business, like when and how do we invoice the customer from the projects, and that combined with what we're getting as sales from our own projects. Last year, overall, we saw our revenues increasing compared to previous years, but there was also a little bit of fluctuation there. On the fourth quarter, we concluded the big development project with Wargaming, and hence we saw a decrease there in the service business revenues. That's natural what happens when you close the project and deliver. And that was also the quarter when we started the launch of Heroes of Warland. So we rolled out the game, started getting downloads, but the revenue generation we expect to happen later this year. And when we look at this in a bigger picture, we saw 28.5% year-on-year growth on revenues last year. But at the same time also we saw more losses than previous year. And this is because we were building our portfolio. So end of last year, we completed the development on our portfolio. So we had a lot of costs, but also a lot of one-off costs, especially related to the launch stage and launch stage marketing push. These costs are now something that we don't need anymore in 2019. So now from beginning of 2019, we've been streamlining our costs and minimizing the losses. Here's our cap table. And since we listed Nitro Games here in Stockholm in June 2017, we've been able to build a cap table of good owners into the company. We've done few directed share issues, and during those rounds, good investors have joined us and have been supporting us through these first 2 years, or almost 2 years on the market now. And moving forward, if we go to 2019 and what you can expect from Nitro Games this year, we need to first a little bit look back. In early 2017, we started with our new strategy, which is basically that we create competitive multiplayer games for mobile phones, for a global audience. And we seek to do this in a fashion where we act as the developer, developing the game, and the publisher, publishing the game for a global distribution. And that was the reason why we took the company public in June 2017. We needed funds to build that self-publishing capability. We needed funds to build those data pipelines and funds to build the marketing pipelines. That's what we've now done. And also we have what we call our service business, which you can see in here. And in that business, we basically offer our services to some of the leading companies in the industry, basically consultancy business. That's how we also make revenues. And in our strategy in 2017, we started as a games company specialized for development. So we had the capability to develop these games. Then we expanded into this thing called self-publishing, started hiring the people required for that and building the pipelines. But now in 2019, once all that's built, we built the team, we built the technology, the data pipelines, we've also built the games. So all the expensive heavy lifting so far has been done. Now our focus shifts into what we call live operations. And this live operations is the whole core of free-to-play. That's when you have a game on the market, you have customers, and you have data. Everything in our games is built around data. So whenever me or anybody else plays our games, we send tons of data to our servers, and the servers analyze our user behavior, and we tweak and modify the game based on that. And that's how we keep improving our games day after day, week after week, month after month, and hopefully year after year. Historically, you've been seeing some of the best free-to-play games in the market have a lifetime of more than 5 years. So a game product that you can download for free has had a lifetime of more than 5 years simply through these in-app purchases. And that's the secret behind the data pipelines. So that's a mode where we're now. And what happens after beginning of this year, we talk a little bit later. But also other things that we've now done this year. I mentioned about the cost structure and everything. We've also reorganized our operations. This starting from beginning of January, because right now we are no longer in the mode where we focus on the development of the games, so no longer a software development mindset. Now the mindset is about operating the games that are on the market, and we already have these customers globally. And therefore, we hired 2 new people end of last year. Leo Kielman is our game director, and Jukka Hilvonen is our director of development. These 2 gentlemen are added to the team to take over the game teams and lead them through this live operation stage. Leo Kielman is one of the oldest game developers in Finland and most veteran guys in the field with deep understanding on free-to-play and especially how the games are operated. And right now, very early in this year, we have completed all the service business projects that we did during the last 2 years, which also acted as a source of revenue for us that helped us to build all this. So now we have the whole team in our disposal, and we are focusing on our own portfolio. Heroes of Warland, the game that we just launched end of last year, that obviously gets the most attention. But now we also are doing things with the previous game Medals of War and RuneGate Heroes, which we just announced that we transferred from Wargaming to us. So we now also act as the publisher for that game. That's now going to go into what we call soft launch during first quarter, which is basically launching it for a limited audience on limited markets to collect data and determine the next actions based on the data. And moving a little bit forward, the focus point for us this year is to get that winning game. And we also call our way of working a winning game. We focus this year in operating what we have built during the last 2 years. So the whole mindset of the company shifts now from the end of last year to this year. And how we are doing that is that firstly, we focus on our own things, restructuring the team, working on our own projects. And at the same time, we are streamlining the cost structure in Nitro Games. We have built our P&L in a scalable fashion, which means that previous 2 years, we've had items in, for example, raw materials and services, which is basically third-party outsourced development costs, or in other operating expenses, a big part of that being marketing costs, costs for doing marketing campaigns or building marketing assets. Those costs we can now shave off. And also what we are now doing during the first half of this year is what we call cooperation negotiations in Finland. That's us affecting our personnel costs. And we have just announced this week that we've started this cooperation negotiation process, which is basically a legal formality in Finland, which means that during a 6 week, we together with our employees will go through the process, and after that we can make those actions necessary for us. It's something that's I've understood pretty different here in Sweden, where if you need to reduce personnel, I've heard it takes a lot of time and is super expensive. So this is more or less the opposite now. And once these things are done, and during those things parallel to each other, we are also looking into new opportunities. And with these new opportunities, we talk about new projects, new deals with new partners that help us to take the company forward after the first quarter. So focusing on new projects, which then again we expect to generate results 2020 and beyond. Meanwhile, as I mentioned, we focus now in the first quarter into our own portfolio, and the heavy thing there is obviously Heroes of Warland, but also Heroes and Superstars, the reality show, together with all these partnerships that we've been building end of last year. So these deals that we announced end of last year now start to take effect one by one in early 2019 as we roll out the game to new markets, new stores, and roll out the show into new locations, whether it's geographically or to new channels. And I think the biggest thing there is that this year, now during the first half of this year, we're rolling out Heroes and Superstars reality show in the global TV broadcast to support the expansion of Heroes of Warland. And here's how that one looks like.
It is time now for the first ever Heroes and Superstars match to begin.
Okay, let's go.
Welcome to the first team challenge, Downhill Kamikaze. The winning team will receive 2 points, while the losing team will receive 1 point. It's time for the second match in Heroes and Superstars.
I got torches. One down, another one. So they just... Don't chase. Ah! The least spicy? I think this is the most spicy.
Life and death situation.
30 seconds. Is it not considered done yet?
Is it because of you?
You got it.
There we go. You got a milk mustache. Yeah, I don't think I can do this. I'm sorry.
There is a lot of action to see before that, and in the end, only the 2 best teams will make it to the finale.
So that was the reality show that we built during last year. And what that basically is, we have 12 superstars, out of which 9 are professional esports players. So they play video games for a living. And what does that mean? It also means that like any sports athlete or any celebrity, they have followers. These superstars combined have more than 10 million followers in social medias. And how this whole thing works is that they participated in this reality show, which basically means that they get exposure, which helps them to build their own brand, them to reach more people and build more followers and so on. What we get on the other hand is content that we can sign for different distribution channels. We've so far announced already close to 10 different distribution deals for this show. We've announced a sponsorship and partnership deal with Huawei and so on and so on. So these are all added tools for us to spread knowledge about the game, but also to generate additional revenue streams and additional streams for new downloads moving forward. So far, during the first 6 weeks, when we started rolling out this show last year, we've had some hundreds of thousands of viewers for the show. We've had more than 2.5 million minutes of the show being watched online. And we've had more than 5 million people reached through social medias with the show. And this all before it's even gone into TV, which happens now this year. So we continue to spread the game. We continue to spread the show. And meanwhile, we connect all of this together with our players into what we call these esports tournaments, where some of these superstars are joining us on stage like we did end of last year, and so on and so on. So that's what's happening this year, longer term, with Nitro Games. Thank you.
Thank you, Jussi.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic. So what we learned here is game development, once it's launched, it's big data driven. So you look in real time and you tweak the game to improve revenue.
That's correct. I think very often you hear people saying that if you're doing a free-to-play game, especially on mobile, the work actually starts when you launch the game. So that's actually the beginning, not the end.
Okay, so then it's numbers are always important.
Yeah.
But here, if you don't reach critical big data mass universe, you don't have anything that's firm to develop from.
Yeah, that's the reason why you basically need to make sure that when you roll out the game, you need to get the data, which means you first need to make sure you have the download so that you have enough data points, that you have enough user cohorts to analyze in the first place. Then that of course means that you need to have people who know what they're doing when they're looking into data, which we often call data analysts and so on and so on. You need tools and pipelines and everything to build dashboards and so on to get clarity into the data, what it actually means. And then all that goes to game designers who then make necessary modifications and improvements to the game. And this goes on day by day on a continuous basis throughout the development.
Okay. Is the biggest games on mobiles, one of the biggest games, is that still Candy Crush Saga by Swedish King Digital, or is that history?
That's a little bit history. It's still big, don't get me wrong. And I think that's also a good example, even though the base game is still the same. But if you play Candy Crush today versus what it was, say, 3 years ago, it doesn't exactly look the same anymore. But biggest game nowadays is Fortnite, definitely, which is a competitive multiplayer game, which very much supports into the favor of this whole category increase on mobile and coming of esports on mobile. And Fortnite overall is a product that's also a free-to-play game, making some millions of dollars of revenue every single day. And that's the sort of how big you can get with a mobile game when you do the data-driven development and live operations correctly.
Yeah. You realize it's money because I think the Swedish tax authorities are hunting King Digital for like 4 billion Swedish or something like that in that area.
Yeah.
Which they can buy a couple of Nitro games for.
Yeah.
You did a directed share issue late this fall, and you got some very knowledgeable investors aboard.
Yeah.
And I also learned when we prepared, when I talked to you on the phone, that you have a Swedish SE-banken and follows Nitro Games, and they did that for free. It's a big debate here with if you want to pay for analysis or if you want. It's supposed to be better to get the analysis for free, of course.
Yeah, for us, I think it was an easy decision because they decided to start making the analysis, so we're not paying for that. So we didn't even need to come to the conclusion that whether paid or free is better because they did it for free anyway. So
that's very good work.
Yeah, thanks.
You should take my job.
Maybe one day.
And now you have the stock was badly hit with the Q4 results, and it's actually. We all in this room can buy the shares at 60% less than Swedbank Börnur Technology and Who was the other? Was that Ola Rolén?
Yeah, he joined on the latest direct at Cherish amongst with a couple of others as well.
Yeah. So why is the share so, just speculate some, why is it so heavy hit on this Q4?
Well, obviously
it seems obvious that this is a high risk,
Yeah,
high reward business.
So we don't want to speculate with the share price, of course, because I've been told that's not appropriate. But we can of course speculate all the things that we actually work on. So end of last year, we had big costs because we invested heavily into getting all the games done and closing the development, rolling out Heroes of Warland, the new game, rolling out the reality show. So there was a lot of money being spent on top of our normal sort of cost structure. And now when all that's done, now we have the users, we have the data, we have the learnings from things that went well, things that didn't go well. So now in early 2019, we're streamlining our costs heavily. We're focusing our best talent now to work on our own games instead of buying outsourced development that much that we did last year. What this means short term is that now that we're focusing on further developing those games based on the data, we're expecting the revenues to accumulate from the games moving forward in 2019 later on. So Q1 we focus heavily on improving and developing the games further, while at the same time we are in talks and exploring new deal opportunities, which will also then generate revenues moving forward.
Someone wants time flies, but one last question from the audience.
When will we know whether Heroes of Warland is a success or not?
I think that's a good question. I would say that the first half of this year is a pretty good timeline for us understanding that what's the true potential with the game. But of course, with free-to-play games, longer term, some games they might be growing slowly and steadily for 2 years, and where you draw the line of success. But I think first half of this year is a timeline when we have a good understanding on where we can go with the game.
Thank you, Jussi.
Thank you.
Nitro Games. Jag är hemskt ledsen för tidsöverdraget. Det var en kombination av flera saker där. Det finns lunch här ute och ProHearings är tillbaka fredag 26 april. Don't miss it.